already gotten some compliments about my little fuzzy red thing, and I wanted to mention that Roland got it for me in New Zealand. And New Zealand, they have a lot of sheep, so they have a lot of wool. But this is possum. And when I think of possum, I just keep thinking of Granny Clampett and possum stew. But you can come up and pet me if you want. It's very soft and awesome. And really, this is a lead-in to appreciation of my awesome spouse, Roland, who is up in the booth doing all the booth stuff. Yes, that's what we want. Also, this week and next week, in the next couple of weeks, he's going to be working on our webpage because we're going to a new format. And, he does a lot of things. You guys get two for the price of one. Not the least of which is he keeps me happy, right? So I just want to, every Sunday I feel like appreciating all the people who help at Unity. And this is your Sunday, honey. I love you and thank you. So I'm not surprised that listening to Justin's piece made me cry, because I'm really close to crying. We had another shooting this week, didn't we, in our country? What do we do with this? Anger, grief, sadness, fear, despair, maybe some hope, and maybe some peace. I went looking for signs of peace. I went looking for signs of people creating peace in the world today, and I found some. In the first video, which is the artist video, I found 3 videos. I looked at a bunch of TED Talks when I looked for people promoting peace in the world. This first video is from an artist called El Cid. He is a calligraphy artist who blends Arabic calligraphy with the modern art of graffiti. He has painted artworks on buildings around the world, never minding that sometimes it's hard to interpret the actual text. Even Arabic-speaking people need to focus to decipher it, he says proudly. Literal translation is beside the point. Perhaps his most iconic project to date was a 2012 message of unity he painted on a 47-meter-high minaret on the Jara Mosque in Tunisia. But El Cid has also painted on tunnels, roofs, towers, and other structures around the world. No building too small, his purpose is always to communicate his belief in hope, peace, and the power of art to a broad audience, comprising anyone who passes by. So I'm going to do my light thing because I think it makes it just a little bit better to see. And then, so you want to show the video?
The most amazing thing about this imam is that he didn't ask me anything, neither a sketch or what I was going to write. In every work that I create, I write messages with my style of calligraphy, a mix of calligraphy and graffiti. I use quotes or poetry. For the minaret, I thought that the most relevant message to be put on a mosque should come from Quran. So I picked this verse. O humankind, we have created you from a male and a female and made you people and tribe, so you may know each other. It was a universal call for peace, tolerance, and acceptance, coming from the side that we don't usually portray in a good way in the media. I was amazed to see how the local community reacted to the painting and how it made them proud to see the minaret getting so much attention from international press all around the world. For the imam, it was not just a painting, it was really deeper than that. He hoped that this minaret would become a monument for the city and attract people to this forgotten place of Tunisia. The universality of the message, the political context of Tunisia at this time, and the fact that I was writing Quran in a graffiti way were not insignificant. It reunited the communities. Bringing people, culture, generation together through Arabic calligraphy is what I do. Writing messages is the essence of my artwork. What is funny actually is that Even Arabic-speaking people really need to focus a lot to decipher what I'm writing. You don't need to know the meaning to feel the peace. I think that Arabic script touches your soul before it reaches your eyes. There is a beauty in it that you don't need to translate. Arabic script speaks to anyone, I believe, to you, to you, to you, to anybody. And then when you get the meaning, you feel connected to it. I always make sure to write messages that are relevant to the place where I'm painting, but messages that have a universal dimension, so anybody around the world can connect to it. I was born.
Any one of us can take a stand for peace in the way that is ours to do. I don't know if any of you remember or have heard about Peace Pilgrim. She was a woman who, I didn't hear about her till after she died. She was born in 1908 and passed in 1981, but from 1953 to 1981, she walked over, 50,000 miles across the United States. She walked for peace. She fasted until somebody fed her, and she stayed outside till people offered shelter. She walked till she got shelter. I love that example because that was her way to stand for peace. You know, we all have different ways. I know I am not called to walk all over the United States. And you are probably not called to that either, but you are called for something. This next video I'm pretty excited about because I feel that it has potential for us maybe next year, as a community. This is a video of Reverend Jeffrey Brown. He's the president of ReCap, Rebuilding Every Community Around Peace. That's a national organization that helps cities build partnerships between the faith-based community, government and law enforcement, and other agencies to reduce gang violence. He is one of the co-founders of the Boston 10-Point Coalition, a faith-based group that was an integral part of what is called the Boston Miracle, a process through which the city experienced a 79% decline in violent crime in the 90s. That's huge. And spawned countless urban collective efforts. Here's this video.
The Season of Peace program is a process that fundamentally changes the way cities deal with violence in a particular inner city community. The usual way is law enforcement heavy. You hire police officers, you hire even more police officers to go in and flood certain hot spots that are ensconced in the violence. You put together sentencing guidelines that jack up sentence levels for offenders, filling up the jails. The Season of Peace program takes an entirely different approach. It looks at youth not as the problem to be solved, but as partners in the process of reducing violence in a community. I'm the Reverend Jeffrey Brown, and I'd like to thank you for listening to what I feel is going to be an important message, not only for your community, but for the entire nation. Gang violence continues to sit within the inner cities, and although violence has gone down throughout the nation in many places, in the inner city it still persists. We still live in a culture of violence. Something happened to me in my life that gave me hope and gave hope to the city that I live in. There was an incident that occurred in the city of Boston where young men came into a funeral during a wake and started shooting up the church and stabbing a young man to death. And after that came the usual meetings of faith-based groups and community groups and leaders coming together trying to figure out a solution. And as we went through meetings and people wanted to make pronouncements and press announcements, there were young people who were outside of the church who wanted to interact with those who were inside the church. And so a few of us leaders decided to go outside of the four walls of our sanctuaries and meet the youth where they were, to talk to them about What are the answers that we can share together in order to reduce violence in our community? And what I want to share with you is that answer. What became apparent for us is that we needed to do business differently. Rather than being clergy locked up in our sanctuaries, we needed to come out of the four walls of our sanctuary to meet the youth where they were. And what resulted in that interaction was a plan. We called it the 10-point plan. We called it the 10-point plan because it was a process that involved people who did not traditionally work together. So we had clergy people, we had the gang members on the street, those who were dealing with drugs and were a part of the violence. We had law enforcement individuals, police officers, people who were in the court system, in the district attorney's office. We had the schools involved, we had social workers involved, and we all came together realizing that all of us can be a part of the solution. That entire process brought unprecedented levels of peace within the city of Boston, and it is the core of what we'd like to bring to the nation, and we call it a season of peace. The Season of Peace program looks at churches, not as static institutions that may or may not help the community, but as active partners, going in and working directly with the youth in order to reduce violence in the community. And it looks at our law enforcement people as partners in this process, where you have law enforcement individuals who will work with clergy and in many cases work with the youth to help reduce the violence in the community. So here's the vision. We have 10 cities, and we have partners already lined up to be a part of this process. We have law enforcement partners. We have churches that are willing to get involved. We have volunteers who want to be a part of this vision that looks at an individual city and brings together the youth and the community leaders and law enforcement and other sectors of the city to declare a ceasefire within their communities. You might say, I don't know if this can work. I can tell you right now, it has worked many times in many other cities. It's time to take this nationally. For the past 20 years, I've been doing this work. I've been traveling in cities across the United States, walking in their communities, walking in the streets where a lot of the violence occurred. And one of the things that we've learned is that it is a process that has been proven to be successful. There have been any number of studies, evaluations, papers been written about it, but we're at a point now where we could put the boots on the ground and make this happen. It's been proven to work.
I really wanted to show his explanation of the season of nonviolence. You can look it up. But the TED Talk I watched, the reason that I was attracted to him, he said a couple of things in his TED Talk. He said, "Why me?" And then the answer came, because I'm the one lying asleep at night worrying about the problem. When he was in Boston in the 90s, why me? And the other thing he said was, there's an old adage from Burundi, that you do for me, without me, you do to me. That you do for me, without me, you do to me. Which part of what drew me to the people I picked today to talk about in the videos I'm showing is that it's really clear that the solution comes from everybody on the ground. The solution doesn't come from the top down. That it comes from getting everybody, including the gang members, in a dialogue. That's pretty impressive to me, to have the courage to do that. So again, this is the good news. Any one of us can take a stand in the way that is ours to do. I am probably not going to walk the streets and talk to gang members. I'm pretty sure that is not my calling. But I do know, I've got a glimmer of what my calling is in this case, in this moment. Because I, too, have been waking up in the middle of the night thinking, thinking about it. What can I do? How can I stop violence in California? How can I stop violence in any part of the world? This next video is of Columbia University Professor Séverine Autesserre. For her, solutions to large-scale instability and widespread violence aren't devised in the academy or mapped out internationally. They're negotiated village by village with the people affected. She's talking about violence in the Congo. She talked in her TED Talk, she talked about that this war in the Congo is a forgotten conflict. More people have been killed in that war in the past years, recently up till now, including now, than in World War II. And it's still going on in the Congo. Calling for a far greater attention to a bottom-up approach than peace building. She shows that resolving local disputes over land, resources, and political power is the key to securing the long-term stability for countries. Another ground up. And she was a part of a peacekeeping mission. She came from somebody who studied from the top and went to the Congo. And in the video, she talks about a friend of hers named Isabel and her husband. And you know, one of the stories was Isabel's husband, one of the groups came through and wanted to take people away and caught Isabel, and Isabel's husband said, "No, take me." Well, he was never heard of again. So that's the Isabel she refers to. But let's watch this video for another glimpse of hope.
Peace-building initiatives, these attempts have been successful at making peace sustainable. One of the best examples is the contrast between the relatively peaceful situation in Somaliland, which benefited from sustained grassroots peace-building initiatives, and the violence prevalent in the rest of Somalia, where peace-building has been mostly top-down. And there are several other cases in which local grassroots conflict resolution has made a crucial difference. So, if we want international peace building to work, in addition to any top-down intervention, conflicts must be resolved from the bottom up. And again, it's not that national and international tensions don't matter. They do. And it's not that national and international peace building is unnecessary. It is. Instead, it is that both macro-level and micro-level peace building are needed to make peace sustainable. And local non-governmental organizations, local authorities, and civil society representatives should be the main actors in the bottom-up process. So, of course, there are obstacles. Local actors often lack the funding and sometimes the logistical means and the technical capacity to implement effective local peace-building programs. So international actors should expand the funding and support for local conflict resolution. As for Congo, what can be done? After 2 decades of conflict and the deaths of millions, it's clear that we need to change approach. Based on my field research, I believe that international and Congolese actors should pay more attention to the resolution of land conflict and the promotion of inter-community reconciliation. So, for instance, in the province of the Kivus, the Life and Peace Institute and its Congolese partners have set up inter-community forums to discuss the specifics of local conflicts over land. And these forums have found solutions to help manage the violence. That's the kind of program that is sorely needed throughout Eastern Congo. It's with programs like these that we can help people like Isabel and her husband. So these will not be magic wands, but because they take into account deeply rooted causes of the violence, they could definitely be game changers. Thank you.
Good news. Each of us can take a stand in the way that is ours to do. I particularly liked that diagram of the top-down conflict resolution and the bottom-up. Bottom-up conflict resolution. And what I wanted us to look at together is the reason I picked these particular things to ask, each of us ask ourselves, how well does it work in the country of you when you use your top-down conflict resolution? Or bring in experts from outside. We all know that in our inner self, that what works is, like Cindy said, Justin got right too, it's what's inside. We have to go to the heart of the matter. We have to go to the heart of ourselves. And the other thing I really love is that I'm going to take a minute and say, I think I'm right when I tell us that, when I say every week that we really need to work on ourselves and with the people we're with to be peaceful, that inner peace, that when I and you get peaceful, it's going to change the world. Here are these mass conflicts and these experts showing us that it has to start with the individual, and in any peacekeeping or in many peacekeeping success stories, it starts with getting the people together with their conflicts. And I actually really appreciate the story about the conflicts in the Congo, or about land disagreements. They're about neighbors. They're about people who just couldn't work it out. So how important is it for us to learn how to work it out, and to start with learning how to work it out in ourselves? Luckily, we have the beautiful practice of meditation to start working it out for ourselves, and then to work it out with each other, to work it out with each other in our communities, in our work, in our families, just everywhere, to make peace.